so this year at NAB, we're really excited about a lot of new features. The first was a global user model. So fancy way of saying you can have one account and that account can belong to multiple agencies. So if you're a freelancer that works with a New York-based team and an LA-based team, that freelancer can just have one login. They can switch between their teams and accounts, and they're good to go. Secondly, we launched an instant archive feature. So I have my data stored in Suite. It's incredibly performant and fast. There's also a premium for that. This archive feature is basically, instead of having to transfer data from Suite to a Glacier or something like that for long-term storage, I can actually instantaneously, whether it's a terabyte, a petabyte, it doesn't matter, I can move it to the instant archive location straight inside Suite. Suite works with creative teams, so video production, animation, VFX, audio, you name it, and we help these teams collaborate. So basically, these teams typically have a problem of sharing large media assets in the files to actually create their content. With Suite, that process becomes instantaneous. They put it on Suite. They can start working with that media as soon as it's there. They don't have to download, transfer, etc.
So you're competing with LucidLink.
LucidLink is a competitor, yes.
So why should I consider Suite Studios?
I come from the creative world. So I was at a studio before starting Suite, personally shipping like 40 hard drives, and kind of a long-winded way of just saying I'm very familiar with our end user in the space. And when we basically started, the number one goal for us, maybe the top two, was performance and reliability from like a data and security perspective. So Suite is incredibly fast. The teams at the Sphere and some of the largest projects in the world are using Suite and choosing us because of that performance. But then also from a data reliability perspective, we've built Suite and really built Suite with the intention behind it being these files are like the lifeblood of all of these creative businesses, and there is absolutely nothing more important than making sure they're safe. And we have a variety of systems and ways that Suite works that kind of supports what I just said.
Okay, we'll come back to security because I am already dubious that you're providing any kind of security at all. But let's go back to this speed thing. If I've got a 1 gig download from the web,
yeah,
how am I able to have faster performance on a cloud-based system than I'd have over hardware stored locally? In other words, what's the benefit to working with you?
So there's some nuance in that question, and therefore...
And there's nuance in the answer, too.
Yeah. The way I think about it is generally when you're thinking about cloud storage, a lot of the network bottleneck is always there. That bandwidth and that speed is something you can't just get around. If your network says it's 1 gig, that's going to be what you get. But there are ways of, and like let's look at a Google Drive type scenario, right? So with these sync solutions, the way it works is basically, if I want 5 seconds of an hour-long video file, I have to download the full hour-long file, chop off 59 minutes and 55 seconds that I never actually needed, and then I have the part of that file that I need. You just moved a ton of data through that limited resource, right, your network bandwidth, just to delete most of it anyways. With Suite and with file streaming, what changes is you only have to stream that very, very specific part of that file that you're looking for. So it's a big efficiency gain. Another maybe simple analogy I like saying is when you hit play on a movie on Netflix, Netflix doesn't download the full movie and then let you watch it. It just grabs the first part of that, lets you watch in as you're playing, it grabs more. Suite does and works in a similar way, but on the file level inside whatever creative tool you want to use.
So basically what you're doing is you're pulling subclips. Is that I have this hour-long video up in the cloud and I'm pulling a 5-second subclip down. But in order to find that 5-second subclip, I still have to preview the rest of the video. But I'm previewing based on a proxy that I'm looking off the server, because you're not downloading the video for me to skim back and forth and find the shot that I want.
Yeah, and this is where, again, it gets a little nuanced. We have a lot of a variety of like algorithms and things behind the scenes because the user is not actually saying, hey, I want this 5 seconds. And the creative maybe doesn't know exactly what they want.
I've never known that to happen.
Yeah. But what they do know is they just want it to feel local and play back local. And Suite will, right, as you're scrubbing through media, etc., because you're not grabbing the entire piece and it's broken down into these very small pieces behind the scenes, you're able to get that performance, get that access, and the outcome of, hey, this feels like it's living on my computer, even though it's not.
Okay, but I've heard that twice before today from some other companies.
Yeah.
It's these little pieces.
Yep.
But I'm still governed by that network bandwidth. What does the little pieces get me? I'm not seeing how that works.
Totally. So the first time you're reading data, you're governed by that network bandwidth. There's ways that you can instruct Suite, hey, I know I'm going to need this. Let's say I'm traveling for NAB, and I want to be working on content this week while I'm here. My hotel network's probably poor. We know the network in the convention center is poor and expensive. With Suite, you can instruct it to say, hey, I know I'm going to need this asset next week. I actually want to cache that file beforehand. Now, the cache could be the entire file. It could be a part of that file. But there's a lot of intelligent things going on behind the scenes to give that outcome of I hit play or I bring this into Premiere or whatever tool you're using, and it just plays back.
But if I'm caching the file, why don't I just drop it onto a SSD and travel with the SSD rather than have to have all this connection to the cloud?
Totally. So most creative teams are working, as I just said, as a team. And a lot of problems are created solely from the fact that with these solutions, you're creating these duplicate versions of the same file locally, and then whether manually or whether through a sync solution like a Dropbox or something, you're then trying to get everyone on the same page.
So the short answer is, if I'm a single person working on a single project, there's not a whole lot of value in the Suite Studios. But if I'm a group working on the same project and I need to collaborate, that's where the advantage comes in.
Yes, and as a group, right, think about Suite as it looks like, when it's plugged in, it looks like a hard drive on the computer. But unlike a hard drive, I can have 200 people all around the world connected to it at the exact same time. No one has to create their own local versions. It doesn't take up any space locally, and I can simply, right, get that playback and that performance that I'd expect from that local drive.
But you already said that it caches, so I've got to have a significant amount of local space to handle those caches. So it does take local space.
It does, but it's also caching only the parts of the files that you're reading. So, right, going back to that scenario, there's something in Hollywood that's pretty well known, a shooting ratio. And with film, it used to be really important because film was really expensive. Now with digital, it's like a little easier. We can, let the cameras roll. It doesn't matter. But if we go back to that example I stated earlier, if you're using 5 seconds of a half-hour long interview, if you are keeping that on an SSD, you are actually keeping all 30 minutes of that file there. With Suite and in the cache, you're literally only keeping that 5 seconds. And then, hey, I actually want the line that he said right before that. I want to add that as well. Suite will just grab those additional couple seconds, but you don't need to have the entire file in that drive.
The other side of the cloud is security.
Yeah.
How do you keep me safe?
There's the high level, like black and white things. So everything in Suite's encrypted in transit and at rest. It's always encrypted. Suite's not storing our customers' data on anything like that we're managing in our building, right? We're using the world's largest cloud providers for that.
AWS?
AWS, IBM, GCP, Cloudflare, Backblaze, you name it. Really anything that's S3 compatible, we can work with.
So it's not your storage hardware.
Correct.
So you're a software layer that's laying above that. So you're using AWS to do your security, and you're a software layer above it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things in the Suite application on our side as well that we're adding, right? That encryption, the permissioning policy, and that's a bit of that nuanced piece, right? If we go back to why not just throw it on a hard drive? That hard drive gets lost, etc. That hard drive you can't just go and get that back. With Suite, because it's actually staying in the cloud, you're not duplicating the data locally, etc. you never actually have that scenario where an end user has files or someone has files on a machine that you can't control. So if there is a bad actor, if someone does need, or if a team needs to remove permissions for a certain set of files, it's an instantaneous one click in the app, remove their access. The cache is now totally unreadable. They can't access the Suite drive. And there's a lot of security benefits when you think about it from that perspective versus, right, having a Google Drive, downloading data locally on my machine and re-uploading it when I'm done.
So what have you announced that's new at the show?
Yeah, so this year at NAB, we're really excited about a lot of new features. The first was a global user model. So fancy way of saying you can have one account and that account can belong to multiple agencies. So if you're a freelancer that works with a New York-based team and an LA-based team, that freelancer can just have one login. They can switch between their teams and accounts, and they're good to go. Secondly, we launched an instant archive feature. So I have my data stored in Suite. It's incredibly performant and fast. There's also a premium for that. This archive feature is basically, instead of having to transfer data from Suite to a Glacier or something like that for long-term storage, I can actually instantaneously, whether it's a terabyte, a petabyte, it doesn't matter, I can move it to the instant archive location straight inside Suite. That happens immediately, the price gets reduced, and if I ever need it back, right, a year goes by, my client needs it, etc., I can drag it right back to active, I can work on it, share it with them, etc. So that's really exciting as well. We also did a whole UI refresh, which I'm super stoked on.
Cool. How would you summarize in a paragraph the key features that people need to consider when they're thinking about Suite?
As a creative, when you think about, right, why we're doing this, why we're creating, it's because we love that process. And typically what creatives don't think about is all of the non-creative work that has to happen to support this creativity. With Suite, the name of the game for us is allowing them to spend all of their time creating, all of the shipping the hard drives, the uploading, the downloading, the trying to locate files, etc., is truly set aside. And with Suite, you sign in, you have access to all of your media, everyone on your team has that same access, and right, you can do more of what you love, which is actually creating the content.
Greg, thank you so very much.
Thanks.